They say funerals bring people together, but as I stood there, under a gray weeping sky, all I felt was distance. The casket looked too small. My grandfather was once a giant in my eyes, not because of his height, but because he was the only person in my childhood who ever truly saw me. No one cried. Not even my parents. Especially not them. My mother clutched her designer purse like she was attending a brunch, not a burial. My father checked his watch 3 times during the eulogy. I almost expected him to pull out his phone and scroll through emails. I was the only one who placed a hand on the casket. Just me. One final goodbye to the man who used to sneak me peppermint candies when my parents weren't looking. The man who taught me how to ride a bike, how to cook eggs, and how to be brave without showing fear. I remember the first time I rode that bike. I was 7. My parents had bought it for my birthday, but never had time to teach me. It sat in the garage for months, collecting dust. Then one Saturday, Grandpa showed up unannounced. He rolled the bike out to the driveway, looked at me with those warm eyes and said, "Today's the day. Annie, today you fly." He ran beside me for what felt like hours, his hand steady on the seat, never letting go until I was ready. When I finally found my balance, he clapped so loud the neighbors came out to see what was happening. My parents? They were inside watching TV. They didn't even notice I'd learned to ride. That's how it always was. Every milestone, every scraped knee, every report card, it was Grandpa who showed up. My parents were always too busy, too tired, too focused on themselves. They had written him off years ago, said he was just a grumpy old man with too much money and too many opinions. But I never cared about the money. I just wanted someone to talk to me like I mattered. Now he was gone. And in that moment, standing there with rain soaking through my jacket and silence screaming all around me, I had no idea that his death wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and secrets. I sat across from my parents at the long mahogany table, feeling like an intruder in a room I didn't belong in. My mother was flipping through a fashion magazine like she was waiting for a manicure. My father swirled his coffee as if we weren't about to hear the final words of a man who raised me better than they ever tried to. They didn't look nervous. They looked smug. "Don't get your hopes up," my mother said without looking at me. He always liked playing games. My father chuckled under his breath. He probably left her a book on how to stop being such a disappointment. I stared at the polished wood, jaw clenched, heart pounding. I didn't care about the money. I didn't. But hearing them talk like that, like I was nothing, reignited every wound they ever gave me. I thought about all the times they'd dismissed me. The college graduation they skipped because my cousin had a recital. The promotion at work I was so proud of that they barely acknowledged over a text message. The countless holidays where I sat at the table, invisible, while they praised everyone else's accomplishments. I was always the afterthought, always the backup plan, always the one who didn't quite measure up. Then the door creaked open. Mr. Halberd, my grandfather's lawyer, stepped inside. He was tall, sharp-suited, and walked with the kind of gravity that made the air shift. He looked at me first, not them, and nodded once, almost like an apology. "Thank you all for coming," he said, voice calm but firm. "As executor of the late Mr. James Callahan's estate, I will now read the will, per his final request." My mother sighed loudly. My father rolled his eyes. "Let's get this over with," he muttered. Mr. Halberd opened a thick envelope and began reading aloud. There were the formalities, assets, accounts, taxes, and then came the part that silenced the room. "To my daughter, Celeste, and her husband, Raymond, I leave the sum of $1. May it serve as a reminder that love is worth more than inheritance." My mother's jaw dropped. "What?" she snapped. "That's a joke, right? Is this legal?" My father's face turned red, fists clenching under the table. Mr. Halberd ignored them and continued. "To my granddaughter, Annie." He paused. I stopped breathing. "I leave the contents of the envelope labeled for Annie's eyes only, as well as all remaining liquid assets totaling $4,500,000. Silence. Heavy. Dead. Silence. I blinked. "What envelope?" My father barked, already leaning forward. But Mr. Halberd calmly reached into his briefcase, pulled out a smaller sealed envelope with my name handwritten in that shaky but familiar scrawl. "Annie, for when you're ready," and slid it across the table to me. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The weight wasn't just paper. It was everything. And I knew whatever was inside would change my life forever. I waited until I was alone to open the envelope. I couldn't risk reading it in front of them. My parents were still in the parking lot screaming at Mr. Halberd, demanding to see a real version of the will. I slipped away quietly, heart racing, the envelope clutched tight in my shaking hands. I didn't even make it home. I pulled into the first empty park I saw and sat in the driver's seat, staring at my name on the front. "Annie, for when you're ready." Was I ready? Probably not, but I needed to know. I tore the seal, and inside was a single handwritten letter. His handwriting was worse than I remembered, shakier, like each word cost him strength. But it was still him, my grandfather, my safe place, the man who never forgot my birthday, who called every Sunday just to hear my voice, who told me I was brave when I felt like the weakest person in the world. "Annie, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. But I need you to know I never left your side. Not even once. I know your parents told you lies about me. I know they made you feel like you were hard to love. But they were wrong. You were always the brightest light in the darkest room. You were the only one who ever looked at me and saw me. Not my money, not my mistakes, just your grandpa. There's something you need to know. Something I discovered years ago that I couldn't tell you while I was alive. Your father isn't the man you think he is. Behind this letter, you'll find a key to safety deposit box number 847 at First National Bank. Inside are documents that will explain everything. I'm sorry you have to learn this way, but you deserve the truth. And you deserve to be free. With all my love, Grandpa. I read it twice. 3 times. Then I broke down. Right there in the car, with the letter shaking in my hands and my tears falling onto the ink. What did he mean by your father isn't the man you think he is? What could be so terrible that Grandpa couldn't tell me while he was alive? My mind raced through possibilities. An affair? A crime? Something from his past? Whatever it was big enough that my grandfather felt I needed to be protected from it until now. One thing was clear. My life would never be the same again. And I wasn't turning back. The bank was sterile and cold. I handed the key to the clerk, my hands trembling. She led me to a private room and brought out the metal box. It was heavier than I expected. When I opened it, my breath caught. Inside were 3 things that would shatter everything I thought I knew. First, a stack of photographs. My father with another woman. And 2 children. They looked happy. Like a real family. The kind of family I'd always wanted. The photos were dated. Some from when I was 5 years old. Others from just 2 years ago. In one photo, they were at a beach. The little girl, maybe 8 years old, was building a sandcastle. My father was kneeling beside her, smiling in a way I'd never seen him smile at me. In another, they were at a birthday party. The boy, older, maybe 16, was blowing out candles while my father stood behind him with his hands on his shoulders. Pride. That's what I saw in his face. Pure pride. I felt sick. While I was struggling through college, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, begging for a phone call on my birthday, he was building sandcastles with someone else's daughter. While I was graduating alone, wondering why my own father couldn't be bothered to show up, he was celebrating another kid's birthday. The betrayal cut deeper than any words ever could. Second, legal documents. A marriage certificate. Raymond Callahan and Elena Rodriguez, married 1997. Birth certificates. 2 children. Lucas and Sophia, the same year my parents got married. The same year. My father had another family, and they didn't know about us either. I stared at those names. Lucas, Sophia, my half-brother, my half-sister. Kids who grew up with the father I never had. Kids who probably thought they were his only children. Kids who had no idea their entire life was built on a lie. I pulled out more documents. Mortgage papers for a house in another state. Bank statements showing regular transfers. School tuition payments. Everything was there. 2 complete lives running parallel, never meant to intersect. And then I found the receipts. Christmas gifts, vacations, dance recitals, soccer games. Everything he never gave me, he gave them. I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't just that he had another family. It was that he chose them. Over and over again, he chose them. Third, a handwritten confession. It was from my grandfather, dated 6 months before he died. Annie, I discovered your father's double life 5 years ago when Elena contacted me asking for help. She thought I was just a family friend. She didn't know about you or your mother. I hired an investigator. The truth destroyed me. Raymond had been living 2 lives for over 20 years. 2 families. 2 mortgages. 2 sets of lies. He stole money from my business to support both families. Over $400,000. I could have turned him in. But your mother was already fragile. And you were thriving despite it all. So I gave him an ultimatum. Come clean or I would. He chose silence. That's why I cut them out. That's why I chose you. Not because you're my favorite, but because you're the only one who never lied to me. Elena and her children deserve to know the truth. So do you. Her contact information is attached. Do what feels right. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. Grandpa, I sat in that cold little room for what felt like hours, holding photos of a life I never knew existed, staring at children who were my half-siblings, at a woman who had no idea she'd been sharing a husband with my mother. The betrayal wasn't just against me. It was against all of us. Every lie he told her, he told us too. Every promise he broke with them, he broke with us. We were all victims of the same man, the same coward. I looked at Elena's contact information, a phone number, an address. She lived 3 hours away, close enough that my father could visit regularly, far enough that we'd never accidentally cross paths. It was also calculated, so deliberate. And I realized something in that moment. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a choice he made every single day for over 20 years. I didn't call first. I showed up at my parents' house the next morning with the box of evidence. They were in the kitchen, my mother making coffee, my father reading the newspaper like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't just lost his father-in-law. Like his daughter hadn't just inherited millions. Like the world was exactly as it had always been. I dropped the photos on the table. Who are they? I asked calmly. My father's face went white. My mother looked confused. What is this? That, I said, pointing at the woman in the photo, is Elena Rodriguez, your husband's other wife. And those are Lucas and Sophia, your husband's other children. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's coffee cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. My father didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the photos like they were a death sentence. Annie, he started. Don't, I cut him off. Don't you dare say my name like it means something to you. I turned to my mother. Did you know? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, this can't be real. But it was. And the look on my father's face confirmed everything. Grandpa knew, I said. He gave you a chance to come clean. You chose to keep lying, so he chose me. I pulled out the legal documents next. He also left proof that you stole over $400,000 from his business. He could have prosecuted you, but he didn't, because of us. My father finally stood up, his voice shaking. I did what I had to do. You had 2 families, I shouted. You didn't have to do anything except tell the truth. My mother collapsed into a chair, sobbing. She looked at him with a mixture of horror and disbelief. How long, she whispered. How long have you been lying to me? He didn't answer. He just stood there, caught, exposed, with nowhere left to hide. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt nothing. I'm done, I said quietly. I'm done pretending this was ever a family. I'm done pretending you ever loved me. And I'm done carrying your shame. I walked toward the door. My father called after me. Annie, please. I turned one last time. The other family deserves to know too. I'm meeting Elena next week. You can explain it to her yourself, or I will. And I left. The coffee shop was quiet when I walked in. Elena was already there, sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a mug, eyes nervous. She looked kind. Tired, but kind. The kind of tired that comes from years of holding everything together alone. I sat down across from her. "Hi," I said softly. "I'm Annie." She smiled, uncertain. "Your grandfather spoke about you. He said you were special." I took a deep breath. "Elena, there's something you need to know." And I told her everything. The photos, the marriage certificate, the stolen money, the double life. I showed her the documents one by one, watching her face change as the truth sank in. At first, she didn't believe me. She kept shaking her head, saying there must be some mistake. But then I showed her the bank statements, the mortgage papers, the receipts with his signature. And she knew. Then she cried. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just silent tears that fell like rain. "I thought he traveled for work," she whispered. "He said he was a consultant. That's why he was gone so much." "He told me the same thing," I said. "Different city, same lie." We sat in silence for a long time, both of us processing the weight of 2 decades of deception. Then she looked at me, really looked at me. "You didn't have to tell me," she said. "You could have walked away." "No," I replied. "I couldn't, because we both deserved better." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you." We talked for hours, about our lives, our pain, the little things we'd noticed but explained away. She told me about the times he'd miss important events, always with a perfect excuse. I told her about growing up feeling invisible. She told me about Lucas's baseball games that his father attended maybe half the time. I told her about my college graduation that he skipped entirely. We were living parallel lives of disappointment, and neither of us knew. And somewhere in that conversation, I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth and healing. Elena asked me about Lucas and Sophia, if I wanted to meet them. I wasn't sure. They were innocent in all of this. Kids who grew up thinking their father was a hero. How do you tell someone that their entire childhood was a lie? But Elena said something that changed my perspective. "They deserve the truth too," she said. "Just like we did. Just like you did. And maybe together, we can build something real out of all these broken pieces." I didn't stay in that house. Not even one night. The day the will was finalized, I packed everything I owned in 2 suitcases, walked out, and never looked back. With a portion of the inheritance, I bought a small house near the coast. Quiet, bright, surrounded by trees, the kind of place where the air feels softer and the mornings taste like hope. But I didn't disappear. I started something my grandfather would be proud of. I opened a small residence for elderly people. The kind who are often forgotten. The kind who remind me of him. The kind who deserve better. I named it after him. Callahan House. It started small. Just 5 rooms. 5 people who needed a place where they mattered. Where someone remembered their coffee order and asked about their day. Where birthdays were celebrated and stories were heard. Within a year, we expanded. 10 rooms. Then 15. Every person who walked through those doors carried their own story of being overlooked, abandoned, or forgotten. And every single one of them found family. Elena and I stayed in touch. Her kids, Lucas and Sophia, are good kids. They didn't ask to be part of this mess. We all met for the first time 6 months after the truth came out. It was awkward at first. Lucas was angry. Sophia was confused. But slowly, carefully, we built something. Not a traditional family, but something real. Something honest. We meet sometimes, not as a family, but as survivors of the same lie. My mother eventually left my father. She moved to Florida, started over, and we talk occasionally now. Carefully. With boundaries. She's trying. It's not enough to erase the past, but it's something. My father tried to apologize. He sent letters, left voicemails, showed up at Callahan House once. I never responded. Not out of hate, but because I had nothing left to say. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to burn, so you can finally walk forward. A few months later, I received a letter from the lawyer. My parents had tried to contest the will again, claiming my grandfather wasn't in his right mind when he wrote it. They even dragged my name through the mud in court, saying I had manipulated him, that I had poisoned his mind against them. that I was a gold digger who preyed on a sick old man. But the lawyer was prepared. He had recorded every conversation, every meeting, every signature. He even had a video of my grandfather saying, with full clarity, "I'm leaving it to the one who stayed. The one who asked nothing but gave everything. The one who loved me when I had nothing left to give." The court dismissed their case in one sitting. In the final hearing, the judge looked at them and said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes you don't lose because someone took what's yours. You lose because you never deserved it to begin with." I watched the recording from home, in my little cottage by the sea. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. Justice had spoken, and I hadn't lifted a finger. The ghosts of the past were finally quiet. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. If you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, if you've ever been the backup plan in your own family, if you've ever had to choose yourself when no one else would, this story is for you. You're not alone, and you're not wrong for wanting the truth. Comment your city below and tell me what would you have done. Subscribe for more family drama stories that cut deep and end with justice. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the loudest form of revenge.